Welcome to part 3 of an insight into streaming. Today we'll be talking about how I created ACW, the highs and lows from running my own wrestling show, and ACW as it stands today. Let's get into it. The birth of ACW. As I stated in part 2, we had a new goal in streaming, to become Mixer Partner. To achieve this, I knew I would need to do something special to stand out. That something special became the birth of ACW. To get started, we needed a name. I went through some of the worst ideas ever, such as WWCCW, Worldwide Created Champion Wrestling, ICW, Irish Championship Wrestling, MCW, Mixer Championship Wrestling, and more. But then I thought, why overthink it? I looked towards my own name, and where would you actually find a psychotic individual? An asylum. With that, it just clicked. ACW. Asylum Championship Wrestling. Now with the name created, it was time to create the show itself. At the beginning, we had no idea what the hell we were doing. I knew we needed championships, arenas, and superstars to run the show, but I had no idea where to begin. First, we created the worst arena imaginable, or at least I think so, compared to what we've created since then. The first arena was so basic, but at the time, I thought it was the best thing ever. Next came the championships. I wanted something a little edgy. Okay, I had no sense of creativity at the time, and spray painted the names on the belts thinking it looked awesome, so we ran with it. Now with the arena made and the belts created, it was time to create our first superstars. This is where we hit a huge roadblock, as we didn't know what to do. Do we use WWE superstars from the game, or do we create our own? So I came up with the idea to create those who actually watch our streams on a regular basis, and they will be our superstars, giving the show that much more personal touch and a reason for people to actually watch. With everything set up and ready to go, it was time to start the show. Our first show at the time, called ACW, was ready to go. Filled with excitement and nerves, it was time to sink or swim. The very first show was a tournament held to define who will be crowned the very first ACW World Champion, the ACW Inmate Champion, and of course the ACW Tag Team Champions. Now notice how we didn't have a women's title yet. That's because we had only one woman on the roster at the time, and that was Willow. Of course the tournament went well, with new champions being crowned at the end of the night, and the viewers seemed to be really into it. But that's when things went wrong. With the fundamentals out of the way, it was time to start ACW on a regular scheduled basis. That became every Tuesday night. Now at this time we had no idea how to book a show that would flow well and where to put each superstar on the roster. The match card was an absolute mess, with random matches all over the place. Now as you can imagine, it wasn't that entertaining to watch at this point. I knew to keep people engaged, we would need to find a way to keep people interested in the show. So I looked back on my own viewing experience of professional sports entertainment and what got me hooked. It was of course the stars themselves and the creative stories. Now if you're a fan of wrestling, you have at some point said these words while watching a storyline play out: I could do a better job than this, the creative team sucks. And while I do agree that sometimes the creative side of sports entertainment has had major flops in the stories, sometimes they just struck absolute gold with certain stories or superstars. This is where I got my first taste of what it's like to create my own stories. And well, let me tell you, it's not actually as easy as we all once thought. I had so many cool ideas of what to do, but trying to actually make it work and make sense week in, week out was a major uphill battle I still face today. This is because not everyone is going to like the story they are in, and someone has to win and someone has to lose. Now the fact that the stars are your own viewers and they become extremely invested in their characters, they don't want to see them lose week after week. So you need to find the balance between the stories among many other things involved in running your own wrestling show. With things up and running, I decided, hey, things look good, why not create a second show? This was the worst idea I ever had at the time. Next, we created ACW's rival show, MCW. Yes, Mixer Championship Wrestling made its return. With the same requirements, such as arena, belts, and superstars, all went well until I realized I don't actually have enough superstars to run two shows. This led to using WWE superstars on the MCW show, and Willow attempted to run it. Now, no fault to Willow, MCW was a massive flop, as no one wanted to watch a show that their superstar wasn't even a part of. MCW was closed down, I think, 2 months after it was first created. But of course this did allow me to put all my focus into just ACW, and of course making it the best show it can be. This led to more people watching the show and wanting a superstar to be a part of the chaos and carnage that was ACW at the time. Building on something special, I quickly realized that we had something special here. As more and more stars joined the show, I needed to spice things up. It was time to change up the basic arenas into something I thought looked great and had that more professional style to it. Starting with the main show's arena, I spent hours upon hours tweaking and rebuilding it over and over from the ground up until I was truly happy with it. The same goes for the championship belts. I wanted to design belts that people would actually be proud to hold. This was definitely a challenge that took weeks to finally settle on a design I was proud of, and that viewers felt and looked like they belonged on the show. With the belts in the arenas updated, it was time to update the storylines. These storylines needed to be compelling and make sense week to week. The process started out slowly, but when I started getting momentum, it became a lot easier to write for specific superstars, allowing them to grow and become even more popular with not just their owners, but the viewers watching them whilst waiting for their superstar to make an appearance. Now, with ACW slowly growing in popularity with my viewers, I wanted to build up on the shows and create more and more stories for each superstar, but these stories needed a payoff, and where better than a pay-per-view show? I created 12 pay-per-view shows to match with the yearly calendar, allowing one show a week and a pay-per-view at the end of the month to be the big payoff for that month's storylines. For the very first ever pay-per-view, I put it out to the community to build our first pay-per-view, which became No Consequences. Now, this was a very poorly built arena with things just all over the place, but to avoid hurting anyone's feelings, I ran the show anyway. After this, I spent weeks designing and planning the next 11 pay-per-views and what they'll be called, such as Bad Blood, Lockdown, and Anarchy, just to name a few. But to add to this, I wanted to have a specific pay-per-view that would be special, to be known as our Big Four. These pay-per-views, of course, became Sanity in the Bank, Summer in the Asylum, Soul Survivor, and the biggest stage, End of Days. Highs and lows of ACW. Now, for the highs and lows of ACW and its creation, and of course running of the show, I'm going to switch things up and do it a little bit differently than before. Here I will list the highs and lows and discuss them. So let's start with the high points of creating and running my own wrestling show. The highs. First up, community. There is no better feeling than having your community collectively get excited for something you have created. In my shows, I get viewers to interact with the show by voting for who they think will win the match that is currently on screen. To see the community come together and support each other and each other's superstars is such an amazing feeling, that knowing that you brought these people together through something you have created is just beyond words. Payoffs. A massive high point for me personally is watching a storyline you have worked on for hours to play out before your eyes and see others engage in the storyline. But when it comes to seeing the payoff at a pay-per-view, it's truly something special. And as a fan of wrestling myself, I feel I am right there with the viewers, enjoying alongside them. Commentary. This is definitely a personal high point, if there ever was one. But seeing just how far my commentary skills have come since the very first show of ACW is incredible for me. At the start, I was so nervous and fumbled my words a lot. But today, I can run a full show and make it hyped, sinister, or just simply fun. Insert a sneaky plug into ACW Asylum episode 17. Go and check out that promo. AJ Styles Raid. This was more of a personal high point, but a high point of running ACW nonetheless. The night AJ Styles, yes, the actual WWE superstar, raided my Annihilation pay-per-view with 111 viewers. Now this was the most people I had ever had watching me and watching ACW shows at one given time. I was starstruck to say the least. I didn't actually believe it at first until Willow showed me that yes, it was actually his account. Not only can not many people say they were raided by a megastar in wrestling, but AJ actually openly chatted with us and stayed to watch the remainder of the pay-per-view. I'm not gonna lie, I made sure I did my best to deliver on the commentary that night. But not just to impress AJ, but to impress his entire community, who were actually there to be entertained. And for the amount of follows and hype that was in that chat that night, I think I definitely did a good job. And it is a night that I will never forget. The lows. First up, physical strain. Now, as some of you may know, I really intensify my voice when running commentary for ACW, but what you don't see is the amount of strain it actually has on me physically. After each show, I am mentally and physically drained, let alone after Big Four pay-per-views. My voice is basically gone. This strain has left me feeling so drained I can't even get up after a few minutes, or it gives me a chronic migraine that can last for hours due to the pressure that I've put on my body. Mental strain. This is the side I try my best to avoid showing to any of my viewers, but it is a constant that is always there when running ACW. The mental side of things can really impact the running of the show negatively, and has also impacted my personal life. This comes from my own personal insecurities though, such as, was it really a good show? Could it have been better? Did that match go as well as it could have? Are people really enjoying this? Are they just saying that because they don't want to hurt my feelings by saying it was bad? This has led to me spending hours and hours rewatching the shows, working on new ideas late into the night, causing severe burnout. And of course, I will be doing another video on burnout and how I've overcome it. Time consuming. The amount of time it takes to create storylines, superstars, including how they look, their movesets, their entrances, and even their personalities. Arenas, including the pay-per-views, and the belts take an insane amount of time to get right. I can actually cut into your own personal time with friends and loved ones. I know some might say, don't work so hard, or take your time with it. But when you run 2 shows a week and a pay-per-view every second weekend, everything needs to be planned ahead of time and tested to ensure the best viewer experience possible. End of days. Let's talk about the biggest show of the year in ACW, End of Days. With the calendar year filled, I wanted to make something special for the end of the year. My own version of WrestleMania, if you will. Looking into the many different styles and names I wanted, something that would be impactful, and yet something that would also fit into the style of the show we were running. This led me to what do people fear the most? The end times, such as Armageddon and the Apocalypse. This fitted perfectly with the tone of my shows, and so the name End of Days fit right in. Now with this plan to be the biggest show of the year, it meant I would have to go big or go home, so to speak. I needed to ensure that only the best stories were to play out and the biggest stars were to appear on the show. This led to watching back hours of shows and back through hundreds of pages of notes for ACW. Here I had found my top stars. They were Shadow, Thunder, Psychotic Kill, Willow and her Wolfpack, Harley and Storm, Pro Johnny and Divon Imler. With our top stars selected, we needed to build their stories from throughout the year. This led to Shadow, Johnny and Dive in an insane triple threat for the #1 contender spot for the World Championship. Willow, the then current Women's MMA champion, had been at odds with her Wolfpack for a while, and it was time for Taylor, aka the Young Wolf, to challenge the Alpha. This led to a brutal and long knockout match, with the Young Wolf defeating the Alpha in an emotional finish. Finally, the main event had to be something special to top everything that had happened on this epic night, leading us to the leaders of the most devastating and dominant factions in ACW today. Thunder, the leader of Evolution and the current Asylum MMA champion at the time, went face to face with Psychotic Kill, the leader of the Ultimate Maniacs and the reigning World Heavyweight Champion. This match was to be a unification of both titles in an Iron Man match that absolutely stole the show. Of course, the match ended with a total of 16 falls occurring throughout, and of course, Psychotic Kill coming out the new World Inmate Champion. Although, it didn't quite stay that way for long. Reaching such a milestone was absolutely incredible for me, and I thought I would never reach this point again. Thankfully, I was very wrong, as the community continued to grow alongside ACW, allowing us not to only just do End of Days 2, but also allowed us to do End of Days 3, where on that fateful night, Generation 1 of ACW came to a close, creating Gen 2. With the first generation of ACW ended, and the best superstars inducted into the ACW Hall of Fame, it was time to call an end to ACW and say goodbye to the amazing memories that we had created. The community, however, had other ideas. They loved ACW so much they demanded more, which of course led to the creation of a second generation of superstars. For this generation, which will be referred to as Gen 2, I wanted to make some changes, but wanted to make sure that I kept the core of ACW alive. This led to the creation of new belt designs, new pay-per-views, and of course the creation of new superstars, which continue the legacy of many Gen 1 superstars, so they will never be forgotten. Starting Gen 2 was exciting and scary all at the same time. I knew it would be a challenge to keep people engaged in the new characters, especially when they had such a bond to their old superstars. This, so far, has been my greatest challenge yet. But with the current storylines in place, more and more people are growing to love their new stars, and the community as a whole is coming together like they once did before for ACW. To make things so much harder with Gen 2, we began right as Mixer announced that they'd be closing their doors forever. This made it so much harder to continue as ACW was created on Mixer, and I began to feel like ACW should have died with Mixer. But I want to say thank you so much to my amazing community for joining us over on Twitch and keeping ACW alive and thriving better than it ever was before. Personally, I cannot wait to see what will happen each week and who will be joining us. Maybe it could be you. Listen to this video. Perhaps you could be the next big star to dominate ACW. Thank you for listening to an Insight into Streaming Part 3. In the next one, I will talk about streamer burnout, the causes for myself personally, and how I overcame it. I stream on Twitch 5 days a week, and of course the link to my Twitch and my socials will be in the description below. As always guys, have an awesome day, and remember, stay crazy, stay psychotic, and I'll see you in the next one.